Thanks, Jim. Um, Obviously, as everybody knows, in March, online learning went from something that we were encouraged to do, from something that some of us had experience with and some of us didn't, because some programs simply did more of it, as Jim sort of implied, than others. But in March, when the university shut down, everybody was basically told, all faculty, you need to put the rest of all of your classes online. And fortunately, we did have the infrastructure to do that. We did have the software to do that. And most people had enough experience with at least putting parts of classes online that they could do that. And then that brought us to summer and this fall. And there are a variety of terms I'm going to throw at you that you may or may not use in Chile to describe these types of online learning. We use terms like synchronous versus asynchronous. I'm teaching both right now. My synchronous class implies that we actually meet and go along together as scheduled. So I am on Zoom with them. It looks just like this, although so many of my students don't turn their cameras on, so I'm just talking to a bunch of black boxes with names. So I actually speak to them, twice a week over Zoom, and I lecture and we talk, and they have material online. Now my asynchronous class, and I have one that's exact same class, they don't actually ever meet with me. They just get the materials that we post on what we call Folio, which is a platform that's really Desire to Learn. And I'll show you some of that in just a second. So those are the sort of the two things that asynchronous versus synchronous. There is a lot of pressure starting in the fall for us to get offline. The state of Georgia, and as Jim said, Georgia Southern University is part of the University System of Georgia. The University System of Georgia is controlled by the Georgia state government, and our state government is run by the Republican Party and our governor, who is very close with President Trump. And therefore, and I'm going to perhaps venture into places I shouldn't, not taking the pandemic as seriously as I think they should be taking it. And just to give you background, I'm the rabble rouser who actually authored a huge document telling our administration, you're not following the science. So I'm sure they love me in the president's office. So there's a lot of pressure for us to get offline and get face-to-face. And the compromise was these synchronous classes that are taught Zoom. And the idea is, well, the professor can be in the room with those students who want face-to-face classes, and the rest can watch through Zoom. For me, I said, I have high blood pressure. I don't want to take the chance. I'm teaching through Zoom as well. Now, how does, there are other terms that you might have heard, everything is so, these terms like hybrid classes, high flex classes. These are terms that we use to describe like a hybrid class prior to the pandemic was, I teach a class called Global Sociology. I meet with my students on Mondays. I meet with my students on Wednesdays. On Fridays, go online. There'll be an assignment for you. High flex means that sometimes it can be online, sometimes it can be offline, sometimes it can be synchronous, sometimes it can be asynchronous. So it's all a mix of these various things. And the terminology, sometimes we get lost in it, but it's really become obviously very relevant since March of this year, where everything went online for a while. Summer was all online. And then in the fall, there has been a move to get us back in the classrooms, to get students back in the classrooms. And there's a really heavy push for spring. Our semester ends in 2 weeks. And then the new semester starts in January, and there's a big push to get everyone back in the classroom. They want students spread out. They want plexiglass in between the professors and the students. But for many of us, we're still pushing to do more and more online. And in other states where they have more educated leadership, there's less of a push to get everyone face to face in the spring. So I can show you a little bit about sort of how we design these classes. Javier, if I can share screen. All right.
It's ready.
Perfect. And all right, does everybody see that? It says global sociology. Okay.
Yes.
So this is my class in global sociology, and I actually have two sections of it. This is the synchronous class. So if you go to content, you can see that under here, there's the syllabus, there's the various sociological theories that we talk about. There's issues on globalization and a whole bunch of assignments on that. Global media, climate change, global pandemics. By the way, I threw that one in starting last spring. Even global views on the United States and our president, which some of you might find interesting. Migration and immigration. So there are a variety of readings, a variety of documentaries, a great big mix of things. When it comes to, say, theories, let's see, we're occasionally I'll even throw in, let's go to global media. So I will also record lectures. And the nice thing about having one that's synchronous and asynchronous is, I can go in here and record my lecture, and we're not going to actually do that, but there you see me there in the corner and a bunch of empty boxes because people don't turn their cameras on, as I said. But I can record during my synchronous class and then go post that in my asynchronous class so that they are getting lectures as well. They just don't have to get up and be online every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 a.m. But this is the Folio / Desire to Learn platform. And you can see that they have it set up, and a student's would look much like this, where this is all the classes that say I am teaching. If I were a student, these would be all the classes I am taking, right? Global sociology, introduction to sociology, sociology of tourism, and each one's set up in a similar way, with content, with different videos, but of course also with recorded lectures, depending on what we're talking about. So this is just to give you an idea of what it looks like when we talk about how we are presenting our online classes. I'd be interested to know if when you guys do these online classes, if you're using similar platforms, similar software. But basically, that's the nuts and bolts of it. Some classes we call, I guess, again, synchronous. We call some asynchronous. Some we call high flex. Some we call hybrid. And it's really just a mix of how much is done live and how much can be done by students on their own. For this asynchronous global sociology class, as I said, they never meet. They can just go through all of this content on their own, at their leisure, what have you. They have the same quizzes, the same tests, the same writing assignments, the same deadlines, but they actually don't communicate live with me the way that the asynchronous classes do. Come spring, as I said, there is a huge push. The irony here is, right, for so long, as Jim was giving you some history of the university and online education, for so long there was this push to do more and more online. And now that the pandemic has forced us online, there is this push to get us the heck offline and get us back in the classroom. And unfortunately, I think they're pushing to get us back in the classroom too early, especially now that we actually have an end in sight, right? We see the vaccines are being produced and are safe, and we can have a timeline to where we can say, look, we have literally 1-2 more semesters of this, and then life can come back to somewhat normal. But hopefully that just, sharing the sort of course setup gives you some idea of how we do things on a day-to-day basis, whether it's synchronous or whether it's asynchronous, whether it's hybrid or whether it's what we call fully online. And that's sort of where we are today. Again, lots of pressure to get offline, but at the same time, pressure, as Jim was talking about, to get entire programs online. So in the future, Georgia Southern would like there to be a sociology bachelor's degree entirely online. Now, that honestly seemed like something that would be a couple years out at best, but since this pandemic has forced us all to put everything online, now realistically, we could probably start offering a bachelor's in sociology online much sooner now, since so many of us have been forced to put everything out there and online. So it's kind of ready to go. Blessing and a curse.
Ned,
Yes.
could you spend a few minutes talking to them about the students' perception about all of this, how much they like it, do not like it, what are their main concerns?
Sure. Well, students here, as I'm sure students there, everybody's having a hard time with the whole pandemic, and on top of everything else, people are worried about their health and their grandparents and their parents and their families and isolation and all of the things that most of the world is being concerned about. They've also had their education sort of turned upside down. Now some students who are very uncomfortable with the online environment, forced to be in an online environment. Others absolutely love the fact that, they can literally get up every day in their pajamas and log on to their computers, and they're in class. It's interesting if we talk about, well, what do we know about what students really think? And this ventures into getting political again. As our administration at Georgia Southern says, the student demand for face-to-face, real live classes is so great that you have to get in the classroom again. None of us faculty are hearing any of that from our students. Not at all. I keep saying, show me some data that actually says that and I will believe you. But I'm sure at University of La Serena, your administration is always on the up and up, unlike ours. The feedback we're getting from our students is they like it just the way it is for now. Yes, everybody misses more human interaction, but they in fact are saying that what they like best, in fact, is these sort of synchronous classes where they do have some interaction with their professors, but they do it from home and they do it through Zoom. So for my asynchronous students, those are 50 students who I could never identify. I don't know any of their names. I've never seen any of their faces, yet I'm teaching them, supposedly. For my synchronous class, for those who turn their cameras on, I actually see their faces, I interact with them, and I actually always say at the beginning of every class, thank you, those of you who turn your cameras on, so I don't feel like I'm just talking to black boxes. When I tell a bad joke, I want to see somebody wince. So the students actually, they really like it, and I guarantee this will change things in the future because there is going to be more of a demand for this. Like I said, it's not for everybody. My son is a college student at Georgia State University, which is in Atlanta, and he's not a self-motivating student. He's had a very hard time with online learning because he's someone who really probably needs to set your alarm, get out of bed, go to a physical class and learn something. If it's all on him, he's been struggling with that, and so that's common too. And given the nature of the pandemic, I think on some level most faculty I know have been sort of bending over backwards to be sympathetic, because we know that everyone's going through a hard time right now. We know that the way that we are providing education is vastly different than what everybody's used to. And to be fair, it's vastly different than what we're used to. I taught a hybrid class before March of this year, but never have I taught 16 weeks, either synchronous or asynchronous online. It's all new to faculty. It's all new to students. But I think that we've all really, truly risen to the occasion and done a really fantastic job with it. And I think that because we have done so well with it, it will absolutely be part of how we continue to teach in the future. Tim, you're muted, I think.
Okay, thanks, Ned. Do we have questions? Who moderates the questions, Elvis?
Francisca and me.
Okay,
I don't know if Francisca has already questions.
At the moment, we don't have any questions from the audience, but I do have a question. And how can you keep the students engaged in your classes?
Well, for the asynchronous class, that's the challenge, right? I don't even know how engaged they are because I literally have so little contact with them. Outside of them emailing me, if they want to have an appointment, prior to the pandemic, you can set up an appointment with your professor during office hours. You come by their office, you chat with them. Now, if you want an appointment with a professor, you email them, you set up a time to Zoom if you want to talk to them face to face. But that would be the only time that I would actively interact with my asynchronous students. With my synchronous students, it's much like this. And I can tell you there is a huge difference between my large lower level classes where there is far less interaction. I'm speaking to a much bigger group that is simply less likely to engage. I have one upper level class this semester, my sociology of tourism class. It's a very small class. There's lots of engagement. There's lots of discussion because one, they're older students. They're sociology students. They're majors. They're more comfortable with the environment, and it's a smaller group. They're engaged, but I can tell you that engagement is definitely lower in the larger synchronous class. Even though there is this Zoom face-to-face, there's not a lot of discussion, and that's probably been my biggest concern and biggest worry, because in a face-to-face class, you do have true human interaction, and in my upper level class, I get that on Zoom, but in my lower level classes, I'm getting too little of it.
Okay, so Javier has a question. He's going to make it directly.
Yes, and it's actually a question for everybody who is already a teacher, because how this dynamic of teaching online to a computer has changed for you, your idea of what teaching is, especially in this kind of situation we're living in the middle of a pandemic. Do you find it harder, for example, to I don't know, motivate yourself to pull yourself up professionally, or also has it changed your ideas about how teaching should be executed, or for students and also for teachers?
Well, I can tell you in terms of changing my perspective, I truly miss being in a classroom. I truly miss the interaction of having real students in front of me, of talking to them before class, during class, after class. I think a lot of the true teaching that we do sometimes isn't just in the lecture. And I can tell you that since we've gone all online, I log on at this time, I log off at that time, and all they really get is what I say between here and there. So there's absolutely something missing. And I also there are issues with motivation, and this actually gets to Javier's question about getting students to attend online. One of the upsides, downsides of a university policy, and this has made it very hard to truly kind of grasp how much of an impact we're having. Because of the pandemic, there's no attendance policies for classes this semester. That's so if somebody, say, got exposed to COVID-19, they could go and they could get tested. If they're sick, they don't have to, go through a bunch of hoops to get, look, I can't come to class. Or if people are just depressed from isolation, we don't want to call them out and punish them for that. So there are absolutely no attendance requirements, meaning that I have classes sometimes where literally half the class is not attending. That's frustrating. There's a lot more students are sort of dropping off literally the face of the earth. I look at, all right, there's a due date for this assignment, and there's 50 people in the class and 30 have turned it in. Well, what's that other 20 doing? It's not as if I'm in a position to see them and talk to them like I would be if I was face to face. So that's been a true frustration. That hasn't been just me. We've in department meetings, we've talked about this, just the numbers of people who are not involved, the numbers of people who are not logging on. One of the nice things about that Folio platform, when I was showing you the class, there's a place I can go on that site that gives me the list of every student who's on there. And it tells me how much time they've spent on each assignment. It tells me if they've accessed each assignment. I have a colleague right now who's got several students who are taking their tests online. They're taking them very fast and they're all making A's, and they've never been online. That's a huge red flag, right? She's now having to deal with the whole thing what happens when students cheat, and can you prove they were cheating? Well, they haven't been online and they're making A's. Maybe they're just brilliant. But that part of the software is useful for us in looking. All right, well, are these students engaged, at least in the material, if they're not engaged in active interaction with me? And attend something like a class attendance. Sometimes students get the point where if I'm going to record the lecture that I'm giving over Zoom, because Zoom makes it easy, you can always just go down there and click record. If I'm going to record it and post it later, do they need to get up at 11 o'clock and log in? Or can they just get up at their leisure and watch the recording if I remembered to post it that day? And that's why they need to be there, because I'm getting old. I don't remember to post everything. I know that your question had a lot of parts to it, and I went off in about 12 different directions, but hopefully I answered some of it.
Yes, no, absolutely. But do you think, well, actually you answered it in your lecture, but how fast do you think our way to educate is going to change?
I think that this is now going to be, a permanent part of how we all do this. It won't be the primary part. I think one of the things that as I said, is we've all learned through this that nothing can replace that face-to-face relationship between professors and students. Nothing can replace that kind of mentorship, particularly when it comes to higher level students. It is something the students gain from it pedagogically, and we as faculty, I mean, I don't think I ever appreciated how much I got out of my interactions with students until you put me in a situation where I have so little actual interaction with students. Now, the students who the bane of my existence, a pain in my ass all the time, right? No, I miss them. I want them back.
I also miss my teachers, although I never met them in person, ever. That sounds so very weird. I've never met any of them in person.
It is, and you know, as someone said the other day, that for so many of our students, when they graduate, they need letters of recommendation from their faculty, and they look to their professors and say, "Professor, could you write me a letter?" Well, I don't know who you are. Were you in my class? I don't remember you. You know, it puts everybody at a disadvantage.
Ned, I can't help making this question. My excuses. How do you evaluate your students? It's from time to time, everything at the end. How that?
I've actually, I'll say this, that going all online like this has changed the way that I have done it. I used to have a lot of writing assignments that I would grade. And with 150 students at a time, all online, no help, there are far less writing assignments. So what I'll typically do for, say, my global sociology class, you saw all those various different modules on migration, on pandemics, on globalization, on media. After each one of those, they'll have either a quiz or a writing assignment. This semester, it's been only 2 writing assignments, short ones, and quizzes after each module. For my intro class, they have fewer of those quizzes, but they have bigger ones. And they'll have their last one that first week in December, which will be not a comprehensive final exam, but just a test over the last third of the material. So, you know, a combination. My upper level classes, they do have a few more writing assignments, but a good combination between quizzes, tests, and writing assignments. Not huge term papers, not during the pandemic where there's too many students online. That would be, you know, it's hard enough to get everything graded just because of the volume of students. If there were big long papers, that will be a bigger challenge. Although I should say, in the spring, I'm teaching a senior seminar with advanced students who have to do independent research, and those are going to be huge papers. So that's my headache for spring.
Okay, thank you very much. Francisca, do we have any other question?
Yes, we have a question from Miss Claudia Boniche. I don't know if she wants to ask it herself out loud, maybe.
Okay, okay. I can't see myself on the screen. Sorry. How are you coping with frustration? I think, yeah.
You know, and this is something that I hope our students appreciate, but just like our students are constantly frustrated, just like our students are struggling, so are faculty. You know, my mother lives in an assisted living facility not far from me. I used to see her, you know, not every day, but every 2-3 days. Now, you know, I'm constantly worried about her. I can only visit her now outdoors, socially distanced, with masks, and you know, I know that my situation is the same as my student situations, as my colleagues' situations. You know, we're all stuck in a house that we rarely go out of. You know, I have my groceries delivered to the house. You know, I actually said to somebody the other day, thank God I love my wife. Otherwise, I would kill her to be locked up in a house with her all the time. But we're actually doing okay. And you know, but it's teachers are like everyone else. I worry about my kids. I worry about my parents. I worry about the deadlines of work, and it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy for any of us. But I think we also have, as faculty, have this responsibility to let our students know, hey, I understand it's hard for you. It's hard for me too. It's hard for all of us. And I think that's why, as faculty, we have an obligation to, at least until this pandemic ends, to be a little more sympathetic, to be a little kinder, to be a little more understanding.
Thank you.
Okay. And Jim, do you love your wife?
Yes, Yes, and we get along very well together, as Ned says, thank God. We do very well together.
Very good.
And do you?
Yes, of course.
Are you willing to tell me on this screen?
Why do you ask that? Do you know that?
Ah, now, should I ask Sandra that?
Okay, Francisca, do we have any other question?
Yes, we do. We have
Okay.
one that says, hello, Mr. Ned. I have a question for you. Do all your students attend to online classes? I'm currently working for an accompaniment program here at the University of La Serena, and it's getting hard to motivate students to attend online classes. How could we motivate students?
And as I said, that's a challenge that I've had all semester, because we're getting low attendance. I have classes that have 40, 50 students in them, and I'm lucky if I get 20 something online while we're online. And now, obviously, this is the synchronous classes, not the asynchronous. How do we motivate them to get online? The only way I've been able to think about it is make sure that they're getting something online that they otherwise wouldn't get. There's going to be questions on the test that come from what we talk about online. If you don't show up, you're not going to get that information. You're not going to score well. I hate to do it like that, especially when we're not taking attendance and we're trying not to punish students who can't attend. And it's why I've also been recording lectures if people can't. But it's the biggest challenge of synchronous online classes. How do you get the students to log on? And as I shared from my personal experience with my son dropped some classes this semester because honestly he could not motivate himself to get up and log on and do what he needed to do. And then he calls up, Dad, I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, you're going to fail, so you might as well drop the class and not fail it, even if it makes your college career longer. But it's a challenge, and I don't have an easy answer, because it's something we're all struggling with.
I think we should add that even before the pandemic, we were having trouble getting students to attend classes on campus. A lot of students were not coming to class regularly. That's just been a problem for the last 7 or 8 years of getting the students to the classes. And maybe it answers a question that's come up a lot in the US about maybe we don't need everybody coming to the university. Maybe they do not need to attend. Maybe this is a way that weeds out the students that are not university material people. So I don't know. That's just a question.
And some faculty have attendance policies. Like I said, we're not allowed to during this pandemic. But for my particularly large classes, if you attend or if you don't, my attitude is that's your choice.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm going to present the lectures, and you're going to be tested on them. But I have colleagues who actually take roll every day, and they'll call every name of every student on that roll, and they'll let people miss maybe 3 classes a semester, and then it affects your grade. I don't do that, but I do have colleagues who do.
Okay, thank you very much. Francisca, go ahead.
We don't have more questions on the chat. I don't know. Oh, yes, we have one. Sorry.
Yes, there is one.
Did teachers get any training before going in this new distance teaching?
There was no, when March occurred and everybody was forced to take the classes they were teaching regularly and then quickly put them online. We didn't have the official full scale training, but what we had available to all faculty was an office that was designed to help any faculty member who didn't know what they were doing to do that. But we do offer training for faculty. And in fact, according to the rules, you're supposed to go through these various online learning classes before you teach online. I'll be perfectly honest, I never took the class, but I'm supposed to, and someday I'm sure I will. But we do offer it, and it is, I believe it is useful.
I have a question. I don't know if I can interrupt you, but it's about well, it's interesting to know that your university and our university were working kind of in a similar system, right? We're working the same way as you described at the beginning. The thing is that, do you get feedback from your students? I mean, the ones who attend the lessons, and do they tell you, teacher, we are learning less or more? Do you know that, how they are facing their teaching, their learning process, not their teaching, the learning process?
I haven't received a lot of feedback at this point, but I should say that I got an email from the provost, or that's our vice president of today, basically reminding us all to remind our students to take the course evaluation. So at the end of every semester, all students are asked to evaluate the course, and if those that would be a place for students to say, I didn't learn anything, or to say that, this guy taught the class, half awake and half naked in his bathroom, or whatever, on Zoom. That's the place to complain, right? We haven't gotten that yet, other than I have experienced, and I made this joke with some colleagues. Online students tend to interact with faculty differently, and the joke in my department is all these old white male professors are now learning what it feels like to be younger female person of color professors, because the respect that we used to get just for being old guys somehow is less online. I'll read an email to my wife who teaches for us part-time. I'll say, can you believe this student sent me this email? She's like, yeah, welcome to the world of simply being what female professors deal with every day. And I never thought of that. That's something entirely different that many of us have never experienced. But there's something about this format that sort of lessens the formality. And as I always said, I worked really hard to be this old and this white and this male, that I deserve a level of respect.
Okay, we have 3 minutes more if anyone has any question to make.
I have a question.
Okay, Fernando, go ahead.
Yes, hello. Hello, nice talk. I really loved it. I'm a teacher of English at a school, and it has happened to me a lot that parents complain that distance learning or distance education doesn't work. And in my opinion, it does. It's different. Of course, it's different. But I think it needs changing the mindset of students and parents. Do you think it is so that we need more autonomous students with a different mindset?
Yes, and I actually, when I say that the university system is getting pressure to go face-to-face, and they tell us that students are demanding it, what they're really telling us is that parents of students are demanding it. So that is what we are getting here. There is, the students, as you sort of implied, they're much more comfortable with this format. But this format is something foreign to their parents, and their parents really don't understand it. And that's where a lot of this pushback is getting. Now, in the United States, students are fairly autonomous. Like if a parent calls me to talk about their child who's in my class, I won't even talk to them, because I actually legally am not allowed to discuss anything about their child. So, they do have that autonomy. But I do think there is a generational difference there. And a lot of the pressure we're getting to go to stop all of this online stuff is coming from parents who think that their kid just isn't getting the same level of education they were. And some of those complaints are legitimate. For my son, for example, I'm helping to pay his rent in Atlanta for him to take classes online that he could have been taking here at home in Savannah. But since the university didn't make the decision on how they were going to offer his classes to the last minute, he had to find a place to live in Atlanta.
Okay, we have a couple of minutes to round up the conversation. Jim, if you want to mention anything.
Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt, but we have one more question
Okay, go ahead.
that says, do you think that teaching remote classes should be included in new generation of teacher programs in case of something like this happen again?
I'd say absolutely.
Yes.
I'd say that education programs everywhere should include classes on online pedagogy, and absolutely, because as we've implied, it's not going anywhere. It's going to be part of how we continue to teach, whether we have future pandemics or not. Absolutely, this kind of training needs to be part of teacher education.
And I agree with that too.
Okay, thank you very much. We got to the time for this conversation, and on behalf of Universidad de La Serena, Jim and Ned, we thank you and appreciate the time you could spend with us. Has been very interesting talk, and we hope to have you with us in the future if it is possible.
Anytime.
I would like to add in our thanks, or my thanks to you for doing this. For the students that are still with us, I want to tell you, I think how lucky you are to have a group of professors in the English program that are working to provide you these other alternative viewpoints on very important topics in your life as you prepare to become English teachers. And I would also like to say in closing that I have been very fortunate to work with your university and Elvis Campos and Julio Parada. I have been fortunate to be able to come to La Serena about 10 times bringing students. And I sort of consider your city a second home for me and my wife. So we thank you all very much for your hospitality. Ned?
And I've only been to La Serena once. And that was while I went. Jim brought me along to teach, but I will say that it's one of my favorite experiences. And as Elvis read to you before, I've taken students to Vietnam, to Trinidad and Tobago, to Argentina, to the Czech Republic, to Cuba, which is where I go regularly now. And I often take my kids. They're older now, but when they were young, and their favorite experience was those 4 weeks in La Serena. It was quite magical for them as well.
Thank you very much. I remember that Jim offers opportunities, because the first time he came here to La Serena, I was his tour guide for
Yes.
2 days. I took him to different places and here in the region. Then in the next years, I became his official entertainer. So apart from guiding him, I could read poems, play music for the group and all that. Then he took me to Savannah, Georgia. He invited me, and there I became his personal bartender. So I prepared for him pisco sour, and that made him very happy.
Yes, and we sang Elvis Presley songs with Elvis playing the guitar. All right, thank you very much.
Jim. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
May I say something?
Please.
I'm part of the organizing team. I'm very grateful for you to be here, and to Mr. Campos, who organized this meeting. And I would like to ask everyone if you would like to take a picture. So I'll take a screenshot. And so those who want to appear in the picture, please turn on your camera. If you don't want to appear, maybe you can share an emoji or something. So just, I don't know, like make yourself nicer, and we'll take the screenshot in 5. Let me see, where's the button? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, please share that with us, because I'd love to have that too.
Okay, we will. Thank you so much.
All right, have a good weekend.
The same to you. My regards to Carol.
Yes. Okay, thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Ned.
Ned. Thank you very much. Remember, you are cordially
Thank
invited
you.
to be with us for the rest of the
Let's
afternoon.
give them an applause.
And
bye-bye.
Jean and Ned, just in case you want to come back to La Serena, you can do it virtually because you are cordially invited to be part of our lessons. I'm talking personally. I'm sure my colleagues would really appreciate having you in our lessons and maybe telling a more reduced group of students about your experience with your own students. And that could be a good way to motivate them and know that they're not the only ones who are living and studying this way. You see, it's happening all around the world. And the way you feel and your students feel is the same way as we do. So thank you very much. And the invitation is done.
Thank you. And I'm always happy to do anything like this again in the future. I think Elvis has my contact info from Jim, or can get it from Jim. And please contact me about anything, anytime you want to something like this, something different, or just contact me for any other reason. Please feel free. Students too.
Thank you. All right, and for the audience today, remember that we still have our last event, and I don't know if Jimena is going to project anything to remind us about our last event today, because this is the last day of our successful English Fest. Sorry to say that, but it's been so successful, and with a lot of people attending our events, our meetings.